Violence. Once again, we have to define our terms. What do we mean by violence? War certainly seems to qualify. What about police work? Is farming violent? What about the killing of animals for food? Does it make a difference if such deaths happen in the slaughterhouse? Chickens, cows, and pigs? Or out in the forest? Deer and birds? If someone's attacked, that's an act of violence. But what about if they fight back? Is that violence? Is some violence good and others bad? How do we determine which is which? In general, people seem to think that violence to protect themselves, to protect or feed themselves, is appropriate, while violence against themselves, their families, or the people they care about is not. Defensive violence, as long as it doesn't exceed some standard of proportion, is generally allowable, while offensive violence is often not considered appropriate. However, people are often willing to allow offensive violence when there's a perceived threat against oneself, one's family, or another such target. Santeria is often considered to be a violent religion. Although there are evil and violent people that belong to this tradition, as there are evil and violent people that belong to all religious traditions, some people think that because animal sacrifice is an integral part of Santeria, that either violent people are drawn to it or that people's inhibitions against violence are lowered. As I've argued elsewhere, see my book Where Men Are Wives and Mothers Rule, Santeria Ritual Practice and Their Gendered Implications, Chapter 6, violence in Santeria isn't really in the service of violence. Sacrifice in Santeria isn't really in the service of violence. It doesn't fulfill the criteria generally applied to religious violence. It isn't primarily a response to or an encouragement toward other types of violence. Neither does it serve either as a form of scapegoating or as a replication of a hunting culture. Instead, violence is generally perceived as part of a larger feasting, even in which humans and deities share and are invigorated by the flesh and blood of the sacrificed animals. These are the same animals that people might eat in a non-violent context, for example, chickens. The idea of sacrifice in Santeria is more than merely the killing of animals. It includes all kinds of natural and manufactured goods given to the Orisha. So just as one might sacrifice a chicken or a goat, one might also sacrifice honey or bolts of cloth or rice pudding or even cool water. The Yoruba people and their culture was a warrior culture. They were deeply engaged in empire building and other types of warfare during the period when many of them were brought to the Americas as part of the slave trade. However, as their religious tradition was reconstructed here, it is not a violent tradition. Rather, the tradition has a place for all types of people and all of the ways that people must exist together. Thus, while some of the deities are peaceful and nurturing, and encourage their followers along these paths, others are warriors who are willing and able to fight when necessary and encourage a warrior attitude in their followers. In this, they mirror society. We need nurturers, but we also need people who are willing and able to defend themselves and others. We need teachers and policemen, hunters, weavers, and soldiers. However, once unleashed, violence often proves uncontrollable. There's a story of the Orisha Ogun, the blacksmith, who is also the protector of the town of Ire. Once the people of the town were being attacked. They called to Ogun to come and help them defend their city, which he did. However, after he had managed to kill all of the invaders, his bloodlust was so strong that he turned against the townspeople, slaughtering them in turn. It wasn't until everyone was dead that he awoke as from a dream and realized what he had done. He vowed then and there never again to fight in a human battle. As with all myths, there are many ways you can think about this story. One of the most important lessons is that once you release violence, you lose control over it. Thus, violence might leave the situation in a worse state than it would have been otherwise.